What if the one thing your family promised you suddenly disappeared without a trace? My name is Lauren Whitaker, and on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday afternoon, I found out that nothing in my life was as secure as I thought it was. The call came as I was staring at a spreadsheet in my cubicle, the kind that makes your eyes blur and your soul ache. I was 3 hours deep into reconciling last quarter's financials when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, local area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. But something, that strange instinct you only notice in hindsight, made me answer. "Is this Lauren Whitaker?" the voice asked, gruff, measured, vaguely cautious. "Yes. Who's calling?" "My name is Frank Delaney. I run Delaney's Pawn and Gold on Franklin Street. I believe I have something that belongs to you, a Rolex Submariner." My entire body went cold. "That's not possible," I replied automatically, already reaching for my desk drawer. I kept the watch there during work hours, hidden, locked, protected. My fingers fumbled the latch open. Empty. Gone. My breath caught somewhere in my throat. Frank's voice returned, this time softer. "Ma'am, you still there?" "The watch," I whispered. "It's gone." "I was afraid of that," he said. "Look, I think you'll want to come down here. There's something I need to show you. And I'd rather not talk about it over the phone." The call ended, but the chaos inside me had only just begun. I grabbed my keys, muttered something to my manager about a family emergency, and bolted. My hands trembled against the steering wheel the entire drive. The Rolex wasn't just any watch. It was my watch. Well, my father's first, then mine. The only thing he left behind that was truly meant for me. It wasn't about the brand or the dollar value. It was what was engraved on the back, something I'd read 100 times, but never really understood until now. To Lauren, "May time always be on your side. Love, Dad." He gave it to me the day before he died, pressing it into my palm in the hospital, his skin pale and paper thin from the chemo. "It's yours now, Laure," he whispered. "Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." That was 3 years ago. 3 years before my mom remarried a man named Greg Sutton, and 3 years before Greg's son Mason, a walking startup cliche with dollar signs in his eyes and zero follow-through, moved into our lives like a wrecking ball in sneakers. Delaney's Pawn and Gold was wedged between a vape shop and a payday loan outlet, a corner of town that practically smelled like desperation. When I pushed the glass door open, the bell above it chimed a tired little jingle. A man with a stocky build, salt and pepper hair, and a wary expression looked up from behind the counter. "You, Lauren?" he asked. I nodded, still catching my breath. He didn't smile, just studied me for a moment, then said, "You look like him. Your dad. He used to come in sometimes back when this place was newer. Always paid back what he owed. Never tried to hustle me. Rare kind." Frank disappeared into a back room and came back carrying a familiar leather box, the kind I'd held in my hands hundreds of times. He set it gently on the counter and opened it. There it was. The watch. Smaller than I remembered, almost fragile. My chest tightened. "This came in yesterday," Frank said. "Guy said it was his." But when I popped it open to inspect it, something didn't sit right. He looked up at me, and for the first time I saw a flicker of concern in his eyes, not just as a shop owner, but as a man who knew something wasn't adding up. "There's more to this watch than meets the eye," he said. And just like that, I knew this wasn't just a robbery. It was the start of something bigger. A betrayal, maybe. A mystery. A secret I wasn't supposed to find. If you've ever had something taken from you that meant more than words could explain, something tied to the last good piece of someone you loved, leave a like, and let's see where this story leads. Frank studied my face for a long second before speaking again. "You okay to hear some things that might shake you up?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure if it was the truth or a reflex. "The guy who brought it in said his name was Mason. Early 20s, maybe. Talked a mile a minute about some app that was going to revolutionize local e-commerce." Frank's air quotes cut the words like a scalpel. Said he was liquidating assets to fund his vision. My stomach turned. Mason Sutton. My stepbrother. Of course it was him. Frank slid the watch across the counter open now to reveal the gleaming face I'd memorized since I was 6. I couldn't take my eyes off it. I've been in this business 30 years, he continued. Usually I don't ask too many questions. If the ID checks out and the item isn't flagged, that's the job. But this one... He tapped the glass lightly. This one felt wrong. Like it had a soul. Like it didn't want to be here. A lump rose in my throat, thick and hot. Frank leaned in. When I opened the back to verify the serial, something caught my eye. See, someone made a modification. Real subtle. I almost missed it. But when I pushed here, he pointed to a nearly invisible groove. The back popped open. I blinked. Wait, what? He pressed gently, and sure enough, the casing clicked, revealing a tiny hidden compartment I never knew existed. Nestled inside, folded impossibly small, was a piece of paper. Frank didn't touch it. Didn't read it. Didn't feel right. Figured if your dad hid something that deep, it was meant for you. My hands were shaking as I reached for it. The paper was delicate, aged, but intact. My dad's handwriting unmistakable. Tight, neat, unmistakably his. Lauren. If you're reading this, something's happened to the watch. That's okay. Go to safety deposit box 1212 at Crestview First Bank. Keys inside my old level in the toolbox. What's in that box belongs to you. It always has. I had to steady myself against the counter. Frank gave me a moment before breaking the silence. You want to buy it back officially? Or should we pretend this transaction never happened? I looked up at him. How much? $8,500, he said flatly. But that's the thing. I didn't log the transaction. No ID copy. No paperwork. Technically, this watch was never here. Why would you do that? He took a breath. Because 15 years ago, your dad helped me keep my kid out of the hospital. I was 2 months behind on rent drowning. He did a weekend roofing job for me. At cost. Said, you pay me when you can. He never brought it up again. I could feel tears welling. He never told me that. Frank shrugged. He wasn't the kind of guy who kept receipts for kindness. We stood there in silence for a moment as I clutched the Rolex to my chest, like it was the only anchor I had left. That was the moment I knew 2 things. First, my father had left behind more than a keepsake. And second, someone in my own home had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I thanked Frank. Profusely. Shaking his hand, I promised to bring the key back after I found it. He nodded but didn't say anything else. Some debts, after all, aren't meant to be spoken aloud. The sun was dipping behind the clouds as I pulled away from the shop, the watch back on my wrist tighter than before, almost like it didn't trust me not to lose it again. I thought about Mason, about my mom, about how easily they must have walked into my room, opened that drawer, and decided the one thing I had left from my dad was worth sacrificing for an app that probably wouldn't survive 6 months. If you've ever felt that kind of betrayal, quiet, clinical, hidden behind a smile, leave a comment. I want to know I'm not the only one who's had to learn the truth from strangers instead of family. That night, I didn't go home. I parked my car in a grocery store lot 2 blocks from the house and just sat there watching the dashboard clock tick forward minute by minute as if daring me to make a move. The Rolex on my wrist felt heavier now, not because of its weight, but because of what it carried, the truth. And maybe more than that. My father had always been the kind of man who built things to last. Kitchen cabinets, tree houses, Sunday routines, trust. He wasn't a man of many words, but when he gave you something, his time, his tools, or that damn watch, you knew it came with a promise. Now all of it felt compromised. I eventually drove to my friend Brooke's apartment, knocked on her door, and collapsed on her couch before saying a word. She poured me wine without asking. I told her everything. Your stepbrother sold your dad's watch, she asked, stunned, like actually took it and pawned it in. I nodded, swallowing hard. To fund another one of his app ideas. The same guy who thought his last app would revolutionize carpooling for pets? That's the one. Brooke blinked. You need to burn that house down. I managed a laugh, but it dissolved too fast. I'm serious, Brooke. I can't go back there like nothing happened. They stole something sacred. Brooke leaned forward. Then maybe it's time to stop treating that house like home. That hit me harder than I expected. But she was right. The next morning, I woke early, heart pounding, with one mission: find the key. I drove straight to the garage. My mom and Greg were already out. I could tell by the quiet and the absence of Mason's thudding music vibrating through the floorboards. I didn't waste a second. My dad's old toolbox sat beneath the workbench exactly where I'd left it after the funeral. It hadn't been opened in years. Covered in sawdust, it looked almost sacred, like a relic waiting to be rediscovered. I knelt beside it, careful, reverent. The latches creaked open with a sound that tugged at some forgotten part of me. The smell oil rust wood hit me like a memory, like childhood. And there it was, the level. A Stanley beaten from years of use, but still solid. I remembered Dad using it to show me how to hang pictures straight. Close enough, he used to say, isn't good enough if you want something to last. I ran my fingers along its edge until I found a small crack near the bubble chamber. Just like the letter said. My heart kicked up a notch. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a small brass key. I clutched it in my palm like it was currency. In a way, it was. At that moment, I felt something shift. The anger I'd carried since that phone call with Frank began to evolve, solidifying into purpose. My father had left me a trail, a map, and I was going to follow it. I returned to my room and tucked the watch into a zippered pouch in my purse. I glanced once at the door Mason had probably waltzed through when he decided to take what wasn't his. A hollow pit sat in my stomach, but I ignored it. There was no confrontation yet, no shouting match, not until I had all the facts. But I knew one thing for certain: if my father went to the trouble of hiding something this carefully, it wasn't just money. It was a message, a legacy, and possibly my way out. If you've ever had to trace a loved one's intentions from beyond the grave, if you've ever followed their silent breadcrumbs not knowing what you'll find, tell me where it led you. I'm not done yet. Not even close. Crestview First Bank stood on the corner of Maple and 3rd, its red brick facade a quiet testament to old money and small-town reliability. I'd passed it 1,000 times growing up, but never had a reason to go inside until today. The parking lot was half empty, the morning sun glinting off freshly washed windshields. Everything felt too normal, too calm for what I was about to do. I stepped inside and was greeted by the sterile chill of air conditioning and the faint scent of carpet cleaner. A woman in her 60s with silver hair and a navy blouse sat behind the safe deposit counter. She looked up as I approached. "Hi there. I'm here to access a box," I said, trying to steady my voice. "Number 1212. It's under Whitaker. Robert Whitaker." She paused, studying me. Then her expression softened. "You must be Lauren." I blinked. "Yes, I remember your father," she said, nodding with a kind of gentle reverence. "He renovated this branch back in '97. Brought donuts every morning for the staff, wouldn't take a penny over budget. That man was a gem." I smiled, a real one this time. "Yeah, he was." She checked my ID, retrieved the bank's key, and escorted me into the vault. The hallway was narrow and dimly lit, lined with steel boxes of all sizes. Box 1212 was about waist-high, bigger than I'd imagined. I slid my key in. She inserted hers. A turn. A click. Then she stepped back. "I'll give you privacy," she said. "Take all the time you need." I pulled open the drawer and slid it into the room behind me. Inside were 3 items: a manila envelope, a leather-bound journal, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. Just Lauren in that same familiar scrawl. My fingers trembled as I reached for it. I opened the letter first. "Lauren. If you're reading this, it means the watch found its way to you, but someone tried to take it first. I knew one day it might happen. Your mother. She doesn't always see things clearly when it comes to what's fair, so I made this box just for you. The envelope has bearer bonds worth about $100,000 now, maybe more. The journal, it's every detail of my contracting business, Client lists, invoices, people who still owe us. There's likely another $50,000 in there if you want to chase it. But what I really left you is time. Time to breathe. Time to choose your own life, free of guilt, free of expectations that never fit you. You always saw the world with your own eyes, quiet, precise, just like I did. That doesn't make you less. It makes you strong in a way loud people never understand. Use this time wisely. And Lauren, if that boyfriend Marcus is still around, the one who borrowed money and forgot to pay you back, dump him. Seriously. Love you always, Dad. I laughed a broken sound through the blur of tears. Leave it to Dad to slide one last jab at my ex into a heartfelt letter from beyond the grave. But more than the money, more than the journal or the unexpected security, what hit me hardest was the phrase, "What I really left you is time." He was right. And for the first time in years, I actually felt like I had some. I opened the envelope next. Inside, crisp bonds, authentic, dated. Interest had been accumulating. He hadn't just thought of the present, he'd thought ahead for me. The journal was heavier than I expected, full of tabs and notes in Dad's neat handwriting. His business brain laid bare down to the last nail and screw. And just like that, my sadness was replaced with something else. Resolve. I walked out of that bank vault taller than I'd entered it. I had my father's watch. I had his records. And now, I had his blessing. If you're still with me watching this unfold in real time, let me ask, have you ever been given something so personal, so precisely tailored to who you are, that it changed everything? Let me know where you were when you realized it. Drop it in the comments below. I'm reading every one of them. I didn't drive straight home. I didn't even know where home was anymore. Instead, I parked in the lot behind a coffee shop Dad used to take me to every Saturday morning. Back then, I'd get a blueberry muffin and a chocolate milk, while he sipped black coffee and scribbled notes into the leather-bound journal I now held in my lap. He used to call it business church. I never understood that phrase until now. Sitting there flipping through the journal's pages, I saw Dad's entire world unfold in his handwriting. Client names, contractor details, diagrams of kitchen remodels, hand-drawn invoices, and even little memory notes like, "Don't forget to call Lauren after third job, school concert." My eyes welled up again. He didn't just work for me, he lived for me. And buried among all that paper, I found something that jolted me upright: Richardson and Blake Construction. A prominent name, $15,000. Status unpaid. Dated 1 month before his cancer diagnosis. I knew the name. They were still in business. Still prominent. And they probably assumed the debt died with him. They were wrong. I didn't want revenge. Not exactly. But I did want justice. For Dad. For his work. For everything he quietly built without demanding recognition. It was time to take action. No more standing on the sidelines of my own story. I opened my laptop and did a quick search for estate recovery lawyers. I didn't want just anyone, I wanted someone relentless, methodical, someone who fought with facts. Enter Diane Vasquez. Her profile said she specialized in financial restitution, asset recovery, and estate mismanagement. Her reviews weren't just glowing, they were fire. I sent her an email with a brief overview, attached a few scanned pages from Dad's journal, and braced myself for a slow reply. But I got a response within the hour. "Lauren, this is very promising. Your father's records are extremely thorough. Based on what I've seen, we have a strong case for full recovery. I'd like to meet. Soon." The next morning, we sat across from each other in her high-rise office downtown. Diane wore a navy suit and spoke with the kind of clarity that made people pay attention. "Your father was meticulous," she said, flipping through the journal. "Most contractors don't keep documentation like this. It's a goldmine." I nodded. "So what happens now?" "We file demand letters to each debtor listed. They'll either pay or dispute. If they fight us, we sue. But I don't think many will push back, not with evidence like this. Especially not Richardson and Blake. They've been sued before for stiffing vendors." "How long?" I asked. Bonds immediate, the debts. Give me 3 months. 3 months. For a life's worth of respect. For validation Dad never got to demand. I signed the retainer agreement, my hand steady for the first time in days. As we wrapped up, Diane gave me a rare smile. Your father must have really trusted you. I think he knew I'd need this, I replied. Eventually. Walking out of that office, I felt different. Not invincible, but no longer invisible. Dad hadn't just left me a box of papers and bonds. He'd left me a blueprint. A reminder that justice isn't something you wait for. It's something you build with your own 2 hands. If you've ever inherited more than money, if someone left you purpose disguised as paperwork, tell me in the comments. Because maybe what we leave behind isn't stuff. Maybe it's a way forward. And maybe that's the real legacy. I didn't return to the house out of sentiment. I returned because I had unfinished business. By the time I pulled into the driveway, Greg's truck was parked out front, and I could hear laughter echoing through the living room window. My mom, Greg, and of course, Mason, the startup prince himself. The sound didn't make me angry. Not anymore. It just made things clear. They were fine, comfortable, laughing, while I had spent the last 48 hours unraveling a legacy nearly stolen from me. I walked in quietly, but the moment Mason saw me, his expression shifted. That smug confidence flickered for just a second before he covered it with his usual lazy grin. Lauren, he said, arms spread wide like I'd just returned from vacation. Look about the watch. I held up a hand. Save it. Greg stood. Let's not do this right now. Now's exactly when we're doing this, I said, dropping my bag onto the floor. I pulled out the leather box and set it on the coffee table. The air went still. Mom's voice cracked. You found it. No, I said, calm but firm. I recovered it. There's a difference. Mason laughed nervously. Look, it was just a watch. Just a watch. My voice rose before I could stop it. It was the only thing Dad left me. The only thing. And you walked into my room and stole it. He bristled. It wasn't stealing. I live here too. No, I snapped. You squat here. You contribute nothing. And when you needed funding for your latest digital disaster, you decided my inheritance was the easiest ATM. Greg stepped forward, that same manufactured authority he always tried to use. We're a family, Lauren. Families share resources. Funny, I said, because I don't recall Mason offering me a share of his Mercedes or his Cabo vacation. But you were all real quick to share what wasn't yours. Mom stood slowly. Lauren, honey, he's trying to build something. You have a good job. You're stable. There it was. The real truth. The unspoken hierarchy. Mason, the visionary. Me, the dependable one, therefore disposable. So because I'm stable, I said I deserve less. Mom opened her mouth but couldn't answer. That silence said everything. I looked at all 3 of them. I want the money back. All of it. $8,500. Greg scoffed. It's already invested. In what I asked. The app he doesn't even have a beta for. It's all part of the process. Mason muttered, eyes darting. You committed a crime, I said coldly. You broke into my personal drawer. You sold stolen property. And if I don't see that money back in full with interest, I'll press charges. I already filed a police report. With your name on it. The room exploded. Mom gasped. Greg barked something about betrayal. Mason tried to play victim. But I was done listening. If you've ever had to fight for what's already yours, if you've ever been told you're overreacting for wanting basic respect, drop your story in the comments. Because sometimes the people who call themselves family are the first ones to treat your worth like a loan they never plan to repay. I didn't slam the door when I left the living room. I didn't need to. The silence that followed me up the stairs said everything. They hadn't expected me to push back. They hadn't expected me to matter. My room felt different now. Smaller. Not in size, but in soul. I looked around at the posters still taped to the wall, the books still lined up in perfect alphabetical order, the photos on the dresser that hadn't been dusted in months. It was all frozen in time, like I was still the obedient daughter who kept quiet and didn't make waves. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I pulled out 2 suitcases from the closet and started packing. It didn't take long because when you realize something is no longer home, you stop holding on to the weight of it. I took only what mattered: my father's journal, the bank documents, the Rolex, and my own peace. As I zipped up the second bag, I heard a knock on the door. "Lauren," it was my mother's voice. Quiet, almost trembling. I didn't answer. The door opened anyway. She stepped inside slowly, her hands wringing together like she was still trying to find a version of herself that could talk me down. "I just want to say," she began, "your father would be ashamed of you. Turning on your family over a thing." I turned to face her. "You think this is about a thing?" She flinched at the intensity in my voice. "This isn't about a watch, Mom. This is about the fact that you let them take it. That you watched them dig through my things, sell something sacred, and said nothing." She opened her mouth to defend herself. I didn't let her. "You married a man who doesn't see me as a person. You enabled a boy who treats me like a safety net. And when it came down to a choice, you picked them. Not once. Every time." Her voice cracked. "You don't understand how hard it's been." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You wanted a family that made you feel important. So you traded the one that made you feel safe." She didn't deny it. She couldn't. "I'm moving out," I said simply, "today." Her face contorted, trying to land somewhere between pity and rage. "Where will you go?" "That's not your concern anymore." She hesitated. "We're still your family." "No," I said, standing straight. "Dad was my family. The rest of you. You're just people who live in the same house." And then I walked past her, dragging my suitcases behind me, each wheel a slow punctuation to the sentence she'd never let me finish before. As I reached the stairs, Mason appeared at the bottom, arms folded like a sulking child. "I'll pay you back," he said, "when the app takes off." I didn't stop walking. "No, you'll pay me back now. With interest." His jaw clenched. "And if you don't," I added, "my lawyer will be in touch." "You got a lawyer?" he scoffed. I reached the bottom step. "You really thought I'd just take this lying down? If you've ever had to walk away from the people who should have protected you but didn't, if you've ever packed a bag not just with clothes, but with boundaries, then you know what that moment feels like. Let me know in the comments. And if you're still standing in that house unsure whether you deserve to leave, this is your sign. Take your time back." I loaded the last suitcase into the back of my car, just as the sky began to bruise into twilight. The house stood behind me like a memory already fading, too polished on the outside, too cracked within. I didn't look back at the porch. I didn't wait for one final apology that I knew would never come. I pulled away without a word. I wasn't sure where I was going yet, but I knew where I wasn't coming back to. That night, I booked a room at a modest extended stay hotel, nothing glamorous, but it was mine. 4 walls, a clean bed, and a lock only I had the key to. For the first time in years, I slept soundly. No passive-aggressive dinner conversations, no fake laughter echoing from downstairs, no subtle digs about how I never took risks like Mason did. Just silence and peace. The next morning, I met Diane, my lawyer, again. She had that same sharp energy, but this time she was holding a folder. "I've got good news," she said, sliding it across the table. "The bank verified the bearer bonds. They're clean. Market value as of yesterday, $127,000. I stared at her. "That's more than he estimated." She nodded. "He underestimated the interest, and the market was kind." I exhaled slowly, like I'd been holding my breath since the moment Frank told me about the watch. "And the debts?" She grinned. "We've recovered $21,000 so far, including the full amount from Richardson and Blake. Once we threatened to make the invoice public, they folded." I blinked. "Already. Your father kept excellent records, Lauren." This journal, she held it up. "It's not just a ledger, it's a case file." I couldn't help the laugh that escaped. He always said he didn't trust digital. Well, he trusted the truth. And the truth is winning. Diane and I shook hands, this time with real weight behind it. I left her office with a strange mix of power and grief swirling in my chest. This wasn't just about recovering money, it was about recovering him, the respect he deserved, the proof that his work mattered, that he mattered. Later that day, Greg called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, his voice slippery with false sympathy. Something about keeping the family together and how they never intended for things to get this far. He even offered to have Mason work something out. Delete. 5 minutes later, a text from my mom came through. I still don't understand why you're doing this. Why you'd turn against your own family over a thing. A thing. Even now she didn't get it. Even now she refused to understand that it wasn't about the watch. It was about what they thought they had the right to take. About how they expected me to stay quiet, to comply, to be the stable one who sacrificed without protest. And it was about how done I was being that person. If you've ever stood at the edge of your old life and refused to step back in, if you've ever chosen clarity over comfort, right, I choose myself in the comments. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't to fight for your place in their world, it's to build your own. 3 weeks later, I stood in the doorway of a house I never thought I'd own. It was small. A 2-bedroom craftsman tucked into an old neighborhood with cracked sidewalks and overgrown trees, but the bones were good. That's what Dad would have said. It's got good bones, Lore. Solid things last. The truth is, I didn't buy the house because it was flashy or because I had something to prove. I bought it because it was 5 blocks from where Dad grew up. Because the hardware store where he bought his first drill was still just around the corner. Because the scent of sawdust still clung to the wood siding like memory. It felt like coming full circle. I moved in on a Sunday morning. No big moving truck. Just a couple of friends, a few boxes, and a silent determination that pulsed stronger than any goodbye. I didn't tell Mom or Greg. I didn't have to. I'd stopped looking for permission the day I took the watch back. In the bedroom, I placed Dad's toolbox under the window and set the Rolex on the nightstand. Not in a display case. Not hidden. Just there. Where it belonged. That night, as I unpacked, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. Lauren, it's Tyler from Delaney's. I'm really sorry to call you directly, but someone came by the shop asking about you. I sat up straighter. Who? Some guy, late 20s, black hoodie, couldn't stop pacing. Said he was your stepbrother. I didn't say anything, obviously. Just thought you should know. I thanked him, heart tightening. I didn't need to guess why Mason had shown up. The police report I'd filed was real. His name was on it. And if he thought he could guilt or bluff his way out of it, he had no idea who he was dealing with anymore. Sure enough, later that evening, a knock sounded on my front door. I peeked through the curtain. Mason. I opened it slowly, standing tall in the frame. Lauren, he said, voice low. Look, I know I messed up. But this is getting serious. The lawyer, the report, the threats. I mean, it's family. No, I said, cutting him off. You lost the right to that word the moment you opened my drawer and sold what wasn't yours. He looked at me like a wounded puppy, the charm already unraveling. I was desperate, I thought. You didn't think I snapped. You took. That's the difference. He shifted on his feet. I'll pay you back. You will pay me back. In fact, you already owe me. And Diane, my lawyer, is filing the civil claim next week. Come on, he said, voice cracking. You're really doing this? I didn't blink. Yes. Because for once I'm protecting something. Me. He stood there for a second too long, then turned and walked off into the dark, shoulders slumped. I didn't watch him go. I closed the door, locked it, sat on the floor and exhaled. And in that moment I realized something. This wasn't just about money, or a watch, or Mason. It was about boundaries, real ones, legal ones, emotional ones, ones I never felt allowed to have until now. If you're watching this and thinking about all the times you let someone cross your line, hoping they'd stop on their own, write I owe myself better in the comments. Because you do. We all do. The weeks that followed felt like rebuilding muscle after a long injury, slow, sore, but satisfying. I spent my mornings answering emails from Diane's office, tracking invoices and payments recovered from my father's outstanding debts. Every dollar was a quiet reminder my father's work mattered. His time meant something, and now mine did too. By week 6, Diane had recovered over $43,000. Richardson and Blake Construction paid in full, no lawsuit necessary. Apparently, they had a long history of shortchanging contractors and weren't interested in a paper trail that might invite deeper scrutiny. Dad's journal had become both sword and shield, meticulous, undeniable. Diane said most people don't win these cases. They get caught in loopholes buried in silence. But your father documented everything like he knew one day someone would try to bury it. He did, I said. They almost did. That same week I got a call from Greg. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail that was part apology, part manipulation, and all too familiar. We didn't mean for it to get this far. Your mom's been crying every night. Mason's a mess. Don't let this break the family. I deleted it. The next day, an email arrived. From Mom. Lauren, I don't understand who you've become. You were never like this. Cold. Legal. Unforgiving. You're letting money and pride turn you into someone we barely recognize. All over a watch and some old papers. What would your father say? I sat with that for a long time. What would he say? Then I remembered his letter. His quiet warnings. The key hidden inside the level. The bonds he protected for decades. The records he kept. The way he pressed that watch into my hand on his deathbed and whispered, "It's yours. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." He wouldn't ask why I fought back. He'd wonder what took me so long. By now the Rolex had returned to its rightful place on my wrist, not as jewelry, not as a trophy, but as a compass. A reminder that time once stolen is always worth reclaiming. The house was slowly becoming my own. I painted the kitchen the shade of warm cream Dad used to call sunrise eggshell. I fixed the creaky porch step. I even found a faded picture of him tucked into the back of his toolbox showing him in overalls with sawdust in his hair and the kind of smile that meant everything was under control. That photo now lived above the workbench taped to the wall with care. One night, as I lay in bed with the journal open and the watch ticking beside me, I realized something I hadn't dared acknowledge before. They never truly saw me. To Greg, I was a stable paycheck. To Mason, I was an easy target. To Mom, I was a quiet afterthought in someone else's fairy tale. But to Dad, I was the future. The reason he hid his legacy in a timepiece. The reason he never gave up even when the world tried to convince him he had nothing left to give. If you've ever had to remind the world who you really are, if you've ever realized too late that you were never anyone's priority, but your own drop, I am worth the fight in the comments. Because this isn't just about family, it's about freedom. And the moment you choose yourself, you win. The day the civil claim was officially filed, I didn't feel vindictive. I felt free. Diane had prepped the paperwork meticulously, as always. The case was airtight receipts, records the police report, and a notarized statement from Frank, the pawn shop owner, verifying the attempted sale of stolen property. Mason was officially served at the house. Greg called within an hour. Again, I didn't answer. But then something unexpected happened. That evening, I received a string of text messages from distant relatives, my aunt in Michigan, a cousin I hadn't spoken to since Dad's funeral, even Mom's old friend, Donna. Each one read like a miniature guilt trip wrapped in backhanded concern. Your mom says you're suing your own family. We all make mistakes, Lauren. Why destroy your own bloodline over money? You used to be so sweet. So sweet. Like silence was a synonym for kindness. Like boundaries were bitterness in disguise. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I posted a single photo to my private social feed. A simple picture of the police report with one name highlighted: Mason Sutton. No caption, no rant, just clarity. The messages stopped within a day. Funny how the truth, when undeniable, tends to silence the crowd. That night, I sat on the porch of my little house, the same porch I had just finished repainting, watching the sun bleed orange across the skyline. In my lap was the journal. And on my wrist, the Rolex ticked steady like a heartbeat. It was then that I heard the familiar chime of a message notification. I expected more drama, more attempts at guilt, but this one was from Diane. Lauren, attached is confirmation from the bond redemption. Total payout $127,000. Additionally, we've recovered $43,000 in estate-related debts. You are officially in full control of your inheritance. Congratulations. I reread it 3 times. Not because I didn't believe it, but because it felt like closure. Like I had finally stepped off the battlefield and walked into my own life. That same night, just as I was brushing my teeth, the doorbell rang. It was Mason. Again. This time his hoodie was traded for a wrinkled blazer. His hair looked like it hadn't met a comb in days. His eyes were hollow, frantic. "Lauren," he said, "we need to talk." I didn't move. There's nothing left to say. "I'm not here to fight," he said quickly. I made a mistake. I screwed up. The app failed. Investors pulled out. Greg's credit cards are maxed. Mom's freaking out. Can you help? I stared at him emotionless. "I'm family," he added softer now. I stepped outside, letting the door close gently behind me. The air was cool. My voice was calmer than even I expected. "No, Mason," I said. "You're not family. You're a thief. A manipulator. And the only reason you're standing here now is because your safety net is gone." He looked stunned. "But I'm not your net," I added. "I'm not your backup plan. And I'm not your victim." He started to protest, but I held up a hand. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Don't come back here again." Then I turned around, walked inside. And this time, I didn't wait behind the door to see if he left. If you've ever had someone only remember you when they needed you, only come running once their bridges were burning, right? I am not your lifeline in the comments. Because it's not cruelty to stop rescuing people who set your house on fire. It's survival. And its power. The next morning, sunlight poured through the kitchen window, warming the small space in my new home. For the first time, I made coffee without feeling the weight of 1,000 expectations crushing my chest. The house was quiet. Mine. I spread Dad's journal open on the table, flipping through pages filled with notes, drawings, and signatures that told stories of a life built on hard work and integrity. Each page was a reminder of who he was and who I was becoming. That day, I received a message from Diane. Some clients who had owed money to Dad's contracting business wanted to settle before the lawsuit. She was optimistic the total amount recovered would continue to grow. Every dollar felt like a small victory, a tribute to Dad's legacy. But amidst the legal battles and financial recovery, I knew the real fight was internal, reclaiming my sense of self, rewriting my story, and healing from the betrayals that cut deeper than any wound. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from an unknown number. It read simply, "I'm sorry." No name, no explanation. I stared at it, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. Sometimes apologies come too late. In the evenings, I sat on my porch, watching the neighborhood come alive with laughter and chatter from neighbors and families. I was building a new life here, a life rooted in truth and self-respect. One night, I took the Rolex off my wrist and held it in my hands. It wasn't just a watch. It was time itself, a symbol of my father's love, my past and my future. If you've ever felt lost after betrayal but found strength in rediscovery, right, I found my time below. Because healing is a journey, and every second counts. As I closed the journal and turned off the porch light, I whispered into the quiet night, I am worth every moment of this fight. Life doesn't magically fix itself once the paperwork is signed or the debts are settled. The real work, learning to trust again, learning to protect your peace, takes time. I started saying no. No to late-night calls from people wanting favors. No to invitations that felt more like obligations. No to carrying the weight of others' mistakes on my shoulders. I learned that boundaries weren't walls to keep people out, but gates to protect what's inside my energy, my heart, my time. The Rolex ticked on my wrist, steady and unwavering. It became a reminder not just of my father's legacy but of the promise I made to myself to live fully, unapologetically, and on my own terms. Some days were harder than others. Memories of the betrayals would flash uninvited. But with every deep breath I reminded myself that I was no longer a victim. I was the author of my story. I began volunteering at a local community center teaching young women about financial literacy and self-worth. Sharing my story became a way to turn pain into power, loss into lessons. If you're watching this and thinking about your own journey, about the moments that broke you and the ones that rebuilt you, write, "My story matters" below. Because every voice deserves to be heard and every survivor deserves to be celebrated. Remember, freedom isn't just a destination, it's the courage to keep moving forward even when the path is uncertain. If this story has touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Together we can build a world where no one's worth is measured by what others take from them. Fan 14. Months passed, and the weight of the past began to lift, replaced by a quiet confidence I never knew I had. The house was no longer just a shelter, it was a sanctuary. I painted the walls with colors I chose, filled the rooms with laughter and music, and built routines that honored my needs. One evening, I found myself holding Dad's journal again, but this time, not out of duty or grief. It was a source of inspiration. His words, his dedication, and his quiet strength reminded me that resilience is passed down not in blood, but in spirit. I kept the bonds and the records safe, but more importantly, I kept the lessons they carried close to my heart. I learned that inheritance is more than money or possessions. It's the values we carry, the battles we fight, and the love we pass on. To those still struggling to reclaim what's theirs, whether it's time, respect, or peace, I see you. You are stronger than the betrayals you've endured. You are worthy of every good thing life offers. And just like my father gave me time to find my way, you too can create your own legacy, one built on courage, truth, and unwavering self-respect. If this story resonates with you, please leave a comment. Share your journey. Let's lift each other up, because no one should ever feel alone in their fight. By the time the dust settled, I had come to understand the true meaning of inheritance. It wasn't just the money and the bonds or the physical watch that ticked quietly on my wrist. It was the legacy of resilience, courage, and self-respect that my father left for me. I'd faced betrayal, heartbreak, and the painful unraveling of what I once thought was family. But I had also discovered something far more valuable, the power to stand up for myself and define my own worth. The fight had changed me. It taught me that silence is not strength, that acceptance of mistreatment only enables it to continue, and that reclaiming what is rightfully yours is not selfish, it's necessary. As I packed the last box in my old family home preparing for the next chapter, I reflected on everything I had learned. My father's words echoed in my mind. Time is the only real currency we have. I now knew that those words were a call to action, a reminder that how we spend our time is the ultimate expression of our freedom. I vowed never again to let anyone steal my time or my dignity. If you're listening and feel trapped by family expectations, betrayal, or silence, know that you are not alone. Your story matters and your voice deserves to be heard. Share your experience below. Let's support each other in reclaiming our time, our boundaries, and our lives. And if you believe in the power of courage and self-love, I invite you to subscribe and be part of this community. Together, we can rewrite our stories and inspire others to do the same. Remember, reclaiming your time is reclaiming your life. Don't wait for permission. Take it. Life is unpredictable. It tests us in ways we never imagine. But in those tests, we find our true strength. My journey has been marked by loss, betrayal, and the struggle to reclaim what was taken from me. But it has also been filled with moments of profound growth, clarity, and empowerment. The watch on my wrist is more than a timepiece. It's a symbol of my father's love and a reminder of the time I have been given to live authentically. The bonds and journal I inherited represent not just wealth, but the foundation upon which I am building my future. I share this story not just to recount a personal battle, but to remind you that no matter the obstacles, you have the power to reclaim your own time and dignity. Every second is precious. Every moment is an opportunity to choose freedom over fear, courage over silence, and love over resentment. If you're watching this, know that you are worthy of a life lived on your terms. It's never too late to stand up, to say no, and to take back what is yours. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story touched you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Share your story because your voice matters, and together we can create a community where everyone's time is valued and respected. Remember, your time is your most valuable currency. Spend it wisely, live fully, and never let anyone steal your moments again.